All right, so we finally made it through the month of December, so now it's time to do another poster roundup. I know I'm a little bit late posting this video because of my little break that I was doing during the month of December and early January, but I still wanted to make sure that I shared this video so that way we could still kind of do a post-mortem on some of my work from the previous month. So if you're not familiar with these videos are about, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over all of the poster designs that I was either supposed to post during the month of December or ones that I actually posted in the month of December. So I'll give you what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, what I might change now, just some general thoughts and insights, and hopefully you'll be able to learn something from them too. So with that being said, let's get into it. So this was the very first poster that I posted in the month of December. I think at this point in time, I was starting to get a little bit of creative block and I wasn't having a lot of great ideas. So I was really just trying a bunch of stuff and just trying to come up with something that I thought was okay. And while I do like this design, I don't think it's very strong. I think the image of the statues are great, as well as the gradient that I put on them, but that's kind of the most exciting part of this piece. Other than that, there's not really a whole lot going on that I think makes it feel very cohesive or like a really strong design. All the elements that I've used look fine, and I guess they kind of make sense with how I've designed the poster. It just doesn't really feel like it has a very strong theme to it. And so for me, I just feel like it doesn't really connect or resonate in a way that I would really hope to. Now this poster is the start of a run of posters that I did that I think are just really well done. Kind of like what I said about the last poster, I was encountering some creative block, and I feel like this was where I started to kind of unpack that, and I was starting to get really invigorated with, creativity again, and I was just coming up with a lot of cool designs. This design specifically, overall, is one of my favorite designs for this year. I think the image is really cool, how it's kind of blurred out, so it feels a little bit interesting and mysterious. The color gradient just kind of gives it even more of that kind of effect where you're not really sure exactly what's going on, but because of the colors, it makes you feel a certain way. And then I just had a lot of fun just experimenting with the typography, moving things around, breaking things up, turning things on its side, blurring things. And I think overall it was just fun, and that the final result is just something that looks interesting and fun to look at. But I also feel like it has a little bit more of an impact in terms of what the person viewing it might feel emotionally. So I feel like visually and thematically, this design just really hits all the marks. So for this design, I do really like it, but the only thing that I'm not super happy with is I feel like I was relying a little bit too much on the photography and not enough on my own creative input. Like, I do really like what I did with the typography, cutting it off and kind of distorting it, adding some rough textures and some other little bits and bobs kind of around the poster. But I still feel like overall, the main focus of this design is this really great photography, but I didn't really add enough to it to make it really feel like it was my own. And so I kind of feel like I landed a little flat on this one. And so while I think this design is good, I think I could have done a little bit better to add a little bit more input, so that way I'm not just using someone's photography for my own gain. Now, I had a lot of fun making this design right here. Really, my goal with this design was to just kind of experiment with typography, try breaking stuff up, fitting it in spaces where you might not really think about it, and just doing things that I might not normally think about doing. And I think because I approached this design trying to do something different, I think I ended up getting something that's completely different. Like, I typically wouldn't invert a picture like this, or I wouldn't break up the text in the way that you see here. And so to me, it just feels unique and fun. And I think that's what I like about this poster design. And while I don't think that this is a perfect poster design or my greatest piece of work, I don't really know what else I would change about it. Now, this poster is another one of my favorites for this year. I like having the central image in the center be colored differently than the rest of the piece, so that way it draws your eye, and having it sit over the text, I feel like was just a really interesting choice that I don't typically normally do, but it also allows the text to still be legible so you can actually read it. And so I feel like it's a good balance of legibility as well as just being interesting and fun. I just really feel like this is one of those designs that has a lot of character to it, and you really feel something when you look at it. Just using these little snippets of photography where you're not getting the full image kind of makes it feel a little mysterious, and I think maybe invites you to kind of come up with your own story and what you think is going on, and trying to fit together the pieces when you're only getting small bits of information. I also think what really helps with this poster is it's just a strong composition. I think it's very simple, just having everything kind of be aligned to the center of the poster, both horizontally and vertically. But I think it fills up enough of the space of the poster to where it feels like it's not just empty and there's nothing else going on other than just the center of the poster. I think also adding the barcode at the bottom was also a really kind of nice touch, just because I feel like it kind of anchors everything to one point rather than it just kind of floating off in the middle of space. And so while it's not something major that's going on in this poster, feel like it's a very small detail that adds a whole lot. So this is the first design from this month that I was supposed to post, but I didn't. Once again, I was trying to experiment with typography, just kind of try some different ways to kind of lay out the text, trying some different typography, and really just trying to have some fun and seeing what I can come up with. At first, I was really happy with the design, but the more I looked at it, I just felt like it wasn't that strong of a design. It's definitely not bad looking. I think it looks at least somewhat interesting, but it just doesn't really feel like a strong enough design where I felt comfortable posting it and sharing it with the world. And so that's why I didn't end up posting it. Now, this was another design that I didn't post this month. I think for the most part, I executed this idea pretty well. Really what I wanted to do was just make it look like someone is, chewing on glass, as the poster says. But I feel like it felt really empty without anything else. And so while I think I executed on the idea perfectly, I think it just wasn't enough for me to feel really comfortable to post it and feel like this was just a strong poster that I could share with the world. So I think as an experiment and just trying to try something, I think this was great, but as a poster design to stand on its own, maybe not so much. And again, this is another poster that I didn't post for this month. I think what I feel about this poster is kind of the same thing that I felt about the last poster. I think the idea that I executed was great, having the hand and all the eyes and stuff, but I feel like the idea just doesn't come across as well as I would like to. And so I feel like if people were scrolling and they looked at this poster, they wouldn't really get what they're looking at for a while. And so I felt like because of that, it wouldn't really entice the viewer or feel that interesting. And so from that perspective, I felt like it wasn't that strong of a design. Although one of the things about this poster that I'm really happy with is the typography. I think the word pride kind of being this kind of jumbled mess where it kind of looks like it's being liquid and dripping and kind of spread apart just looks really interesting, and I'm just really happy with how it came out. Now that I'm revisiting this poster, what I might do is I might just take the typography and use that in a new design, because while this design as a whole isn't great, I do like the typography and I might be able to use it down the road. So I guess keep an eye out for that because you might see it appear in a future episode. Now this is a really simple design, but I really like how it came out. It started out with the photography where I just cut out this person holding a candle. I thought I might be able to make a cool collage with it, but whenever I was making it, I felt like just nothing was really working together the way that I wanted to. And so I think I abandoned that and I was like, let me just try something typographic instead. And so I thought, what if I made the typography kind of look like it was a flame, kind of having this interest organic pattern that's kind of shifting upwards and then blurring off into the canvas. I also added some noise to the typography just to kind of give it that kind of ashy textured look, which I think the idea that I was going for, I nailed. I think it has an interesting look, and I think the idea that I was trying to communicate is communicated well. Now you may notice something familiar about this poster design if you've watched some of my other videos. A while back I posted a video about me making a movie poster design, and this distorted face came from that design. While I didn't end up using it for that movie poster design, I still thought it was really interesting and I wanted to use it somewhere else, and so I decided to use it for one of my personal poster designs. But since that was kind of the main focus of the graphic, I already kind of had most of it already done. Really, I just had to figure out what I wanted to do for the typography and the bottom of the poster to kind of fill out that space. And I saw another designer kind of use this slanted and cut off typography, and I just really liked the way that it looked. And so I just kind of wanted to try that for myself. And I think shifting the typography in this way is really subtle, but I think it makes a big difference to the overall design. And so while this isn't a favorite of mine, I do really like how it turned out. So this design isn't one of my favorites, but I do like how it turned out, but I think it works a lot better just as a kind of experiment that I did. Once again, I just wanted to experiment with the typography. I just kind of wanted to stretch it, blur it, liquefy it, and just try to come up with some interesting shapes. A lot of the work that I do typically centers around type that's a little bit more straightforward and clean cut. And so I wanted to challenge myself to work with type that was a little bit more organic and not just kind of on a baseline. And so that's how I came up with this design here. It started with the photography, and then I started adding in the typography, and I was trying to find a way to incorporate the typography in a way that I thought looked interesting and wasn't too distracting for the overall design. I think the way that I ended up with the typography is great because I think it works with the theme of the poster, but as well just looks interesting, but you can still read what the typography is. Again, this is another poster where I'm just trying to experiment with typography. I don't remember if the typography or the images came first, but I think what I was going for was just something that kind of felt lonely, and so I just kind of started tackling this poster from there. And I ended up finding this really cool quote where it says, "Solitude vilifies and isolation kills." I thought that was a really nice and short quote that I could use for the poster, and I think it ended up working really well for the design. I think this design is also really interesting because it's very bottom heavy. Both the subject in the main photograph as well as the secondary photograph are all in the bottom part of the image, and so it has a very strong contrast between the top, which doesn't have anything, compared to the bottom. And so I think because of that, this design actually turned out really interesting, and I think creates a really interesting mood and emotion. Now for this design, I was trying to experiment with using grids. It's something that I like to use in my work pretty often, but I'm always trying to find new ways to kind of use grids and kind of break them up and just come up with interesting designs using them. The way that this design started was with the image of the eagle. I thought it was just a really good looking image. And whenever I add this kind of gradient effect that I use a lot, it just looked really cool. And so I was like, let me see what else I can come up with. And since the main color of the image is this orange color, I knew it would contrast really well with blue. And so I thought using a sky image would be great because it's an eagle that's flying through the sky and the sky will be blue, so it'll work thematically as well as visually. And so like I said, I was experimenting with the grid, trying to make the images of the sky, just kind of trying to fit in with the grid, but also have a sense of dynamics with the way that I composed the images of the sky, so that way there was some movement to it, especially with this being an image of an eagle, which is of course going to be a very animated subject. I wanted to make sure that the poster had some type of movement to it. And with all that, I still wasn't quite satisfied, so I wanted to add just a little bit of typography just to bring the entire design together. And so overall, I'm really happy with how this design turned out. Now this is the last poster design that I posted this month. While I don't dislike this poster, I don't think it's very strong. It does have a kind of interesting composition, and I did do something new and different with the gradient map on the image, and so that turned out kind of cool and new. But I think as an overall poster design, it's just not that exciting. I think maybe I could have added some more things visually just to kind of fill up the space, as well as adding a theme to the poster to kind of bring everything together and have a better idea of what I'm making. And so I feel like in those ways, I kind of fell short in this design. And so like I said, I don't think that it looks terrible. I just don't think that it's that strong of a design. And those are all the poster designs that I was supposed to either post for the month of December or that I actually did post in the month of December. As always, I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. Did you like them? Did you have a favorite? Are there some that you didn't like? Is there something that maybe I could have done better? Leave a comment and let me know. And as always, if you learned something from this video or just enjoyed it, I'd appreciate it if you would check out the rest of my channel and then consider subscribing. I hope to see you in the next video.